It is Sunday, not Thursday, but you still know what that means. It's time for Black and Gold Thursdays. I am Jarrett Bailey, as always, USA Today. That is Kevin Adams of the Still Here podcast that you can listen to with Jersey Jerry. Brother, I've been looking forward to this for a while now. I'm so glad that we're doing this.
It's going to be a great time. Anytime you can talk Steelers players throughout the history, I mean, that's something I'm definitely interested in doing.
I meant to ask you, how you feeling after yesterday? I saw you were begging for DeBilla's subs. You looked down bad, buddy.
It was a tough day. So Friday, I got into one. I got into one Friday. I went out. I had a golf tournament early. I was drinking Bloody Marys at 10 a.m. So
I've never had a Bloody Mary.
It's a great morning drink. You don't want to drink them all day, but it's a great day, great way to get the day started. So I have the Bloody. Get out on the course, obviously. Some Coronas are flowing all day. End up having a great day. So the Coronas are flowing more post-round. Had an OAR concert to go to at Stage A.
Is this 18 holes or 9 holes?
This was 18. So this was 18. And this was like a highly competitive match. Yes. So, I mean, at that point, I had been drinking straight through from 10 in the morning all the way to right after the concert. Don't leave the concert till about 10. Go to a cigar bar in the North Shore. There till 1:30. Before I know it, I'm like, wow. I mean, I am wrecked right now. Saturday morning rolls around. I was crippled. I mean, I couldn't move. I was in really bad shape.
It looked like it. It looked like you were miserable. Did you end up getting the DeBilla subs?
I did. So I tweet, I need someone to bring me a sub. And I had wanted to give away tickets to the Browns game anyway. So I'm like, you know what? If I can just barter for a hoagie over this right now, that's absolutely what I'm going to do. And so, yeah, this kid pulled up. He brought me the 14-inch sub. I sent him the 2 tickets and nice doing business.
That's fantastic. There was when I was still in college, I went to Slippery Rock.
The wet pebble.
And I worked in Cranberry too. So it was like a 45-minute commute. I don't know why I did that to myself, but I worked at the Lowe's in Cranberry, and there's a DeBilla's directly across the street. Yeah. And I ate there probably like 4 times a week, and I never had it before then. It is incredible. So
fire subs. I mean, like a local, if you're talking like local establishments, you want to support Pittsburgh, DeBella subs are where it's at. I mean, they have a fire setup, and you know what they do that's so good? They chip their lunch meats. Like they're all thinly sliced chipped, and I'm a big fan. I don't like a hunk of meat.
Yeah, exactly. I am not a fan of thick. Like I think that's why I hate bologna. It's just it's always like
too thick, man.
Them thick boys. Oh, we could have a draft of just local Pittsburgh food establishments, and that would take us all night. My goodness, like
that's something I'm into.
Like First Watch, I love that place. Have you ever been to First Watch?
Oh yeah,
it's tremendous.
Incredible breakfast.
First Watch, probably. Yeah, I was gonna say probably the best breakfast I've had in Pittsburgh is at First Watch. If you're a big omelet person like me, go to First Watch if you're in the Pittsburgh area. But let's get this thing rolling, buddy. So we did a coin flip via text, and you picked tails, and you were correct. So I will allow you to pick first in this draft. 10 picks apiece, and then afterwards, I'll work my graphic magic and tweet out each of our drafts, and we'll see who the fans think won this thing. So by all means, sir, you are on the clock.
I could not, I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I had the first pick in franchise player history and I didn't take the 7. I mean, my first pick is going to be, it's Big Ben. I think that the quarterback position is one of the most important in football. It is the most important in football, especially in today's game. We just enjoyed 18 years of it. It was the most fun I've ever had watching football. We were so blessed. I'm 33. I'll be 34 next month. So the majority of my life was watching the 7. So I wouldn't be able to ever look back on this draft knowing I could have taken anybody throughout history of the team and not have the 7 on the roster. So Big Ben, that's my first pick.
I don't blame you. I was going to do the same thing if I had the number 1 overall pick. Yeah, I mean, you say I'm going to be 25 this year. Ben was a rookie my kindergarten year. So
right.
So from kindergarten until after I was done with college, it was one guy, and I will never be able to put into words just how much one person could mean to me personally as a sports fan. Yeah. And I don't know if anything will ever top the fact that going into his final year, I wrote an article for Sports Illustrated about his top 10 career moments. Somehow someone from his team found it. He saw it. He liked it. He put it on his site. Nothing I do in my career is going to ever top that. So shout out Seven.
I mean, I love the guy. I would be remiss if I ever had a conversation about how much I love the Steelers and he wasn't like very high in the reasoning as to why. I mean, he played football, with such tenacity, and he gave everything he had. I mean, I love him. I will defend him to the ends of the earth. That's my first pick. What do you got for me?
For you, see, I figured that I would have to have this plan. If you took Roethlisberger, I wasn't also going to go quarterback. I'm not going to take Bradshaw here, so spoilers. But I will go with arguably top 3 defensive player of all time, and I'll take Joe Green. I feel like that's a solid first pick. You talk about disruption and maybe the most talented member of maybe the greatest defense of all time, the greatest defensive dynasty of all time, without a doubt. A decade of dominance led by him on that side of the ball. So Joe Green will be my first pick.
It's a great choice. I mean, he would have been. And you see, the lucky thing for you is right now, that you don't have to take quarterback again, like
that's
the
true,
whole way through. I mean, I could bone you really hard and take Terry right here, and then you just have nothing. Like your quarterback spots.
With $0.
Yeah, right. Stack him with 9 other Hall of Famers, and we're looking at
exactly. As long as I build a good team around him, I don't care. I'll take Dree Archer. See, test me, Kevin Adams.
Yeah, right. I am going to go here. So I am a big fan of the trenches. I think you win football games in the trenches. That's why I couldn't be happier with what the Steelers are doing this year. Because of that, they went back to, old school football. Let's smash mouth, let's load up.
This team is going to be very remnant of like 04-05.
Yep, which is great. Look at what we did. We had young Ben, didn't have to do much, could ride a hot defense, just win at the end of the game, and I think Kenny shows a lot of those same traits. So I am going to go right here with Mike Webster. Center, Mike Webster, best center in franchise history, just a mammoth of a man. I know that he's always going to hold it down in the middle for Ben. Mike Webster, that's my choice.
I did not expect Mike Webster to go this early. He was on my board. He was a little bit lower down my board. I was actually going to take Dermontti Dawson before I took Mike Webster, if I'm being perfectly honest with you.
See, I like Dermontti Dawson too. It's just that for me, he was the Iron Man was Mike Webster. I mean, he played forever, and the guy he never missed games, just a monster. So that's the only reason I put him slightly higher. I think both he and you couldn't go wrong with either of those centers.
Hell, you could throw Marquise Pouncey in that mix too, and you couldn't go wrong. So
without a doubt.
You know what? We talk about like the defense in the history of the Steelers, the centers in the history of the Steelers. I mean, just no misses. Jeff Harding's in there too. He was very good for a long
Harding's.
Time.
If Jeff Harding's is the 4th best center that you have in franchise history,
you
have a really good run of centers for sure.
All right, this is. You threw me a little bit of a curveball. I didn't expect Mike Webster to go this early. I'm sticking with. All right. Let me go to my big board. We're already addressing this early. Who am I going to take? I think I'm going to stick with the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to take my personal favorite player in NFL history, and I'm going to take Troy Polamalu.
Okay.
He is single-handedly, I think Bob Pompiana had a really good quote about him once. You could show 100 different highlight films, career films of anybody. Troy's doesn't look like anybody else's. He's just absurd of what he did on the field. His versatility, the freedom that LeBeau gave him because of the trust that he had in him, and he never seemed to let them down. He's my favorite player of all time, man. Love Troy.
And I think it's, again, I love Troy as well a whole lot, but I think that's a great pick for you simply because the Steelers have had crazy good defenses over the last 45 years or so. He is without a doubt in the top 3 of defensive players, and he's definitely the best safety. So
absolutely.
If I'm going to take Ben, I know I'm getting, my opinion, the best quarterback. You're going to take Troy, you're getting the best safety, but there's a little bit of a drop down because then safety is not that stacked after you go through Troy. I mean, Mink is going to be very high on that list, honestly. Yeah. So that's a good pick. Donnie Shell, maybe. Okay. With my 3rd pick, I'm going to go Jack Ham. I think
you're taking the other Jack.
I am going to take Jack Ham. I'm going to take Jack Ham because he's a Penn State guy. I am a Penn State alum, so I love my Nittany Lions.
I've got a Penn State pennant right here.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get many great Penn State players on the Steelers. We have Freiermuth now, but when you get a chance to land one and he goes down as one of the best linebackers in NFL history, the reason that I like him the most, though, is because I've listened to a ton of interviews where they talk about how good he was in the 70s, and they say that he could have been the smartest football player to ever play the game up to that point. And when you
maybe
have
the
a
greatest coverage
guy,
linebacker of all time.
exactly, and what can you use in today's NFL is a great coverage linebacker. So you get a guy like that. He could also rush the passer, great tackler, monster, the quarterback of the defense. If I'm going to need a quarterback of defense, I'm going to take the Nittany Lion, Jack Ham. That's my guy.
I love the pick. I will take the other Jack then. I'll take Lambert to continue going defense. I'm 3 for 3 with defensive picks thus far. Bro, can you imagine like asking Jack Lambert if you can take his daughter out?
Right. I mean, I'll be honest. I would just want to take his daughter out because it's Jack Lambert's, that's Jack Lambert's daughter. I just want to meet him.
You've got some solid material for two truths and a lie if you take Jack Lambert's daughter on a date. That's some good stuff. But goddamn, you see like all of like the old NFL film stuff of him, the missing 2 front teeth, the stories of like having a tryout and like on a parking lot and just picking gravel out of himself, like the toughest son of a bitch to ever play football. And he's if he played in today's NFL, there would be, I don't know, man. He would kill people and do it with a smile on his face.
And I think that's something that, if I could, it breaks my heart that I was born after the 70s. Like it honestly crushes me that I didn't get to live through those decades of just dominance. Can you imagine winning 4 in 6 years? Like I don't, shit, man, we won 2 in 4 years and it was the greatest. Like that's the greatest 4-year period of my life. So I can't honestly imagine it, but to have somebody like that is arguably transcendent, could play football during any generation, that's a hell of a pick. And again, as Steelers fans, we're blessed that we've had guys like that.
Very much so. All right, so that brings us to the 4th round of this so far. So hit me with your next pick.
This is tough for me.
So we're really going to the big boards now. This is where
I'm torn between a couple of guys that I really love. Both cornerbacks, Rod Woodson or Mel Blount. So obviously they changed the game for Mel Blount. He was the definition of just press you at the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
I just think that Rod Woodson's ball skills and what Rod Woodson could do when he had the ball in the open field, he could take punts to the house. He was just an electric football player. I have to slightly give the nod right here to Rod Woodson with my 4th pick.
Okay.
But it hurts me that you're going to end up getting an elite cornerback right there too.
Yeah, I need to really shore up the back end. So I'll match. You took Rod. I'll take Mel Blount then, and have a defensive backfield tandem of Troy and Mel at corner and safety. I still have yet to take. I think you've taken. Have you taken our? Oh, you took Webster and Ben. So you've taken our 2 offensive players thus far.
Yep.
But yeah, Mel, you pointed out they changed the rules because of him, and he was still a multiple-time All-Pro after they changed the rules. So one of the very best. I don't want to say Mel Blount's forgotten a little bit, but when people talk about the best coverage cornerback of all time, it's always Deion Sanders, and that's fair. Deion Sanders is great, but I feel like Mel Blount is much closer than he's ever given credit for.
And I think so. Recently, I had looked at. Like comparative, like PFF tweets, whatever bullshit that they put out there. But comparatively, I saw Deion stats versus Rod Woodson stats, and it is mind-blowing how good Rod Woodson was as well. Another one of those guys who is in the Hall of Fame, first ballot, great cornerback, but just kind of gets forgotten because he played in that same era as you saw Deion. It's unfortunate, though, because it's statistically right there. I mean, just neck and neck, when it comes down to cornerback play. So can't go wrong. Again, we're blessed as far as that's concerned.
That we are. 5th round.
5th round. I'm going the bus. I'm going Jerome Bettis right here.
You want to hear my hot take?
I do.
Jerome Bettis, overrated.
No, that's a terrible take. That's a terrible take. That is awful, man. I just think that there was such a period of time. Now, obviously, you're a little bit younger, but there was a period of time from like 98 through 2002 where Jerome Bettis was unstoppable. And in the open field, sweet feet, man, he was fast. He could run guys over, but he could make guys miss. And it just so happened he played damn near 300 pounds the last couple of years and still was very productive. But I mean, there was a period of time where he was just special. He could catch the ball. From inside of 5 yards, you weren't taking him down. There was not one man taking him down. The forever image burned into my mind is going to be the Brian Urlacher. It's a blizzard, Heinz Field.
That was his last 100-yard game.
Yep. Steelers needed to rattle off 4 in a row to make the playoffs that year to go on to win the Super Bowl. And they rode the Bussy, obviously they had a great running attack those years, but Jerome Bettis, you cannot say overrated. No way. He's like when he retired, I think he was number 4 in all-time rushing yards.
5th all-time leading rusher at the time of his retirement. Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I don't have anything against Jerome Bettis, but it's just like when I think of like my favorite Steelers of all time, he doesn't really.
Doesn't move the needle. Doesn't move
the needle. Yeah, I'm indifferent about Jerome Bettis. That's a good way of putting it. But I respect. I mean, the production speaks for itself. I respect, the value that you're getting him at here. I will finally make my first offensive pick. And I don't want to say it pains me because it's Antonio Brown. I'm taking
God damn it. So if I could have gotten him later, that's just I mean, come on, man. He's the best wide receiver in Steelers history.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And that era between like 2012 to 2018, where you knew that, like, all right, if Ben and AB are both out there, he's getting 15 targets, at least 8 catches, and he's probably going to score. The offense is going to keep us in it. It was the most fun I've had watching football for, like I said, a 7-year period. And throughout that 7-year period, I don't think, like, yes, Julio Jones was very good. Odell Beckham had a few brief seasons at the beginning of his career. In terms of just overall consistency and production, he was second to none for over half a decade. And it made watching football so fun, especially that offense, man. It was a special time. Obviously, everything since leaving Pittsburgh and whatnot has been, I hope he's okay mentally and whatnot. Yep. But he was a special football player to watch. So Antonio Brown, my 5th round pick.
That's something you say. It's a lot of fun that you had watching the Steelers during that period. So Jerry, that's something Jersey Jerry, if you guys don't know who he is, give him a follow. He's a great Steelers fan. That's something that he likes to openly say, that the Killer B era was the greatest 3 to 4 year run of being a fan for him in the history of watching football.
And the crazy thing about that is, like, at the very beginning of it, we had like 4 games when they were all completely healthy because Le'Veon dealt with some injuries. Ben was banged up for a little bit. AB, like, they were all great, but it was hard to get them on the field at the same time for like a season and a half stretch.
That'll always be the what if era, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Like that year that they lose to Jacksonville in the divisional round will always be like, because the Jaguars were Miles Jack not being called down away from going to the Super Bowl. If the Steelers beat Jacksonville, I think they beat New England. And I think they beat Philadelphia.
Well, that's the same year that we had already beaten New England at Heinz Field. Jesse James caught it. And then we got screwed. That's the only reason we even played the Jags that year. So, yeah, while I won't say it was the most fun I've had being a Steelers fan because we didn't win any Super Bowls, it will always be like the what if they could have stayed healthy and saw those guys in the playoffs together, like when we finally had them healthy and we went to the AFC title game in New England, but you're without Le'Veon 5 plays into the game. Like, it's just we could never stay healthy the whole way through the run, and that will haunt me. Those days will haunt me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, they started Fitzgerald Toussaint for a playoff game.
Yeah.
Like, they just
lost to the Broncos and Fitzy Toussaint fumbles. When we're going in to at least take a nice lead over Peyton Manning in Denver.
Yeah.
All right, sixth
really,
pick
we're
here.
living heartbreaking Denver playoff losses right now, aren't we?
Yeah, right. All right, I'm gonna go with. This is gonna be a little bit different. All right, and this is gonna be a little bit different because the Steelers have so many guys that are in the Hall of Fame. We could just pick Hall of Famers if we wanted to, And I'm not. This guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. if I were given a seat at the table where you make the pitch, that I believe it's Jerry Dulac who does it for the Steelers, getting guys into the hall. It would be hard for me to not get irate whenever they give me any bit of pushback about Hines Ward. Hines Ward, he's the number. Do I think he is the best receiver in Pittsburgh Steelers history? No, I would give that to Antonio Brown. But Hines Ward is a Pittsburgh Steeler. He is the definition of what I want my wide receiver to be. He would put his nose in there and block the shit out of anybody, and he would do it with a smile. He had insanely reliable hands. Insane. Yeah. We talked about AB has great hands. Hines Ward had elite hands. And if AB was going to leave town, like the nutcase that he ended up being, breaks my heart, at least we know Hines Ward is still the number one receiver in Steelers history statistically. So I'm going to take Hines Ward here. And I watched him and Ben have a great run, and this was before Ben was even in his prime yet, and they had a great run together. So I have to take Hines Ward, and he just brings so much to the blocking game. I think from a blocking standpoint alone, you could make an argument that Hines Ward deserves to be in the Hall of Fame just for blocking. And what did the Steelers have during those runs? Elite running attacks, because you better have great blocking wide receivers. And I'm a fan of that aspect of the game. So Hines right there for me in the 6th spot.
I appreciate the Hines Ward love. You talk about his elite hands. One catch that will always stick out for Hines is 2010, 2011. One of those, I want to say it was 2011. It's the year that they went to the Super Bowl against Green Bay. Dennis Dixon starts the season. It's week 1 against Atlanta, and he catches a pass like backwards like this over the middle when they're driving to try to either win the game or tie it to take it into overtime. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is, by the way, this is like 10, 11-year vet Hines Ward at this point. He's not a young pup. And the fact that he's still doing stuff like that. I love Hines Ward, man. He was like my first favorite player. I think the first guy I had a jersey of. And if you're a Steelers fan who is around the era of being, who watched him play throughout his entire career, man, like he was a special guy. And I think that he'll always be special to the city, special to the team. So I appreciate the Hines Ward love.
I know the play you're talking about very, very clearly. This was to go to overtime. They end up kicking a field goal. We send it to overtime, and then Mendenhall breaks it away. Right sideline for the winner in OT.
Dick Stockton and Charles Davis on the call that game.
Yep. Great. I mean, those things are just fried into my mind. So that's
absolutely, dude.
Love that. Absolutely. Love that play.
All right. So my 6th round pick. I think I'm going to stick with offense. I don't know if I want to go. Oh, man. Because like you said, we could just take Hall of Famers here.
You're right.
But there are guys who aren't in, who I just have who are really good, and I just have, a personal love and connection to. Oh, this is tough. All right. I feel comfortable. I will take Heath Miller.
That's a great one because again, there's not many other tight ends behind him.
Exactly. And I mean, you talk about Ben, just the love and admiration he has for Heath. He had him on his podcast. And just the obvious mutual love, respect between those two. He was Ben's safety blanket for a decade. Yeah. Helped them win 2 Super Bowls. It was a ginormous part of both of those 2 Super Bowl teams. He consistently, he was never a big name like Gronk or Tony Gonzalez, but he was consistently productive, and he was exactly what the Steelers needed, which is a really good blocker, but also could be a vertical threat. There for Ben in the underneath passing game. Love Heath Miller, one of my all-time favorite Steelers. And again, one of those guys throughout this Ben era that was just always there and always dependable.
And again, with the elite hands, just elite hands. I loved him and the blocking. Heath was another one of those guys that I think was a little bit underrated during those Super Bowl, the second 2 Super Bowl runs after that point. Just very, very reliable, like you said, the safety blanket without a doubt, and just one of those guys, head down, went to work. Never heard him say much, just would just go do his job, do it at a very high level. You could rely on him, and you never had to worry about anything else. So that's a great pick. And in Steelers history, he's the best tight end in Steelers history. So,
oh, absolutely. And there's two Heath plays that stick out to me. One of them was in Super Bowl 43, and it was one of those plays where Ben was running right and then running left and then backpedaling, running back right, and then throwing across his body, and Heath just happens to be there with nobody around him.
On the bottom side of the field.
Yep. And then as soon as he catches it, he gets hit like in the back of the leg and flips over for a first down. We're like, all right, good job, Heath. And then in Dallas, similar play, except he's on the right sideline, nobody around him. Ben's running around for a year, finds Heath, and it's a walk-in touchdown. Like
he scored,
He just always happens to be that guy. Like if Ben's just doing some street ball bullshit, Heath just happens to be like, all right, I'm here.
He knew how to find the soft spot of whatever. If Ben was doing the street ball backyard bullshit, he would find the soft spot for Ben. And that play you're talking about against the Cowboys, Ben looked at him like 3 other times. Like ran that side, looked at him, ran that side, looked at him again, and then finally dumps it off to him, and he just sneaks in the corner there. I mean, that's a typical backyard ball in Ben, but it takes a guy that's smart like Heath to know how to just stay on Ben's radar the whole way through that play.
Absolutely. So we are on to the 7th round now.
7th round. I'm going back to defense here.
Okay.
I'm going to go D-line here. I'm going to go D-line. Okay. I'll be honest. This guy should go to the Hall of Fame. I think when it's all said and done, and he finally does end his career, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I think he has.
I know who you're going with.
2 or 3 first-team All-Pros. He has a couple second-team All-Pros. I mean, look how high he is on the Steelers sack list. It's Cam Hayward. I think Cam Hayward, if you're talking about great Steelers defensive linemen, you have your Mean Joe Greens, you have L.C. Greenwood you could put up there. Casey Hampton, another monster, didn't get a ton of love, but if you were a Steelers fan, you knew how good he was. But Cam Hayward is, not only is he a great football player, he's another one of those guys that's a great Pittsburgh Steeler. Yep. Just the types of guys that embody what I want out of a Pittsburgh Steeler would be Cam Hayward. Another one of those, just do your job, knows how much the game means to the people of the city, blue collar, hardworking, want to be out there, spending whatever money they have to see you play football. And he would do it at a very high level, and he's still doing it at a very high level, at my age.
In his mid-30s.
Right. So the fact that he can still do it this long, I think it will be hard for him to not get into the Hall. He probably won't be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but if he can put together 1 or 2 more elite seasons like he hasn't fallen off yet. I really think it's going to be hard for him to knock it in.
I think he does get in. Like you said, he's got multiple first-team All-Pros. I would have to look at the 2010s All-Decade team, but I'm almost certain he's on it.
I'm pretty sure he is.
So if you've got both of those to your record, it's, like you said, he might not be a first ballot Hall of Famer, right, but you've got that type of stuff on your resume. It's going to be hard for anybody to say, Cam Hayward shouldn't be in. So he does get overshadowed a lot just because, guys like Aaron Donald are going to be, the talk of the town when it comes to interior defensive linemen. But Cam has been a top 3 guy at his position for the last half decade, if not longer.
And I think something that people fail to realize when it comes to this, I mean, for a stretch, he had Tuitt, couldn't really stay very healthy whenever he was playing. He hasn't been there the last couple of years. We had Javon Hargrave, but the Steelers
before Javon Hargrave really became Javon Hargrave in Philadelphia.
Right, exactly. We haven't had like an elite nose tackle per se in some years, so a guy that will free up Cam and let Cam work. So Cam gets a bulk of a lot of double teams inside. And so for him to still have, I think he has 78 sacks, 79 sacks, something crazy like that. Him and TJ, I think, have almost the same exact amount of sacks. If you can do that as a defensive lineman that doesn't have other elite defensive linemen surrounding you, and you know that you're going to take the bulk of the actual double teams and still put up elite numbers like that, Cam Hayward is a very underrated football player, even in today's game. You're Aaron Donald, you're right, but Cam Hayward to me would be number 2 as far as that goes.
Absolutely. Part of me really wants to do something stupid here. Because, technically, I could take this guy. But if I took him in the top 10, it would be a little bit blasphemous. So I'll just tell you what I was going to do. I was just going to be a smartass and take Michael Vick.
Yeah. In terms of, Steelers, that's a great pick.
Yeah, exactly. And what as big a Michael Vick guy as I am, I was ecstatic when I found out that they had picked him up. Didn't expect him to like actually have to go in and play, but lo and behold, he did, and he threw a bomb to Marcus Wheaton against the Chargers once, and I was like, all right, yeah, you know what, I'm sold. This is great. But I'll take a quarterback, but I will take Bradshaw with my 7th pick. He is a guy, and you know what? There was an interview that he did recently. It kind of broke my heart a little bit. I don't know if you saw this, but he was talking about how he wishes that he doesn't think that he is like respected like amongst like the greats of all time, and he wishes that he had that. And I was like, God damn, Terry, I'm sorry.
And I think
I love Bradshaw though, man.
A lot of people have said, he took a lot of shit. I guess
yeah.
I mean, and he was very outspoken about Ben early on in Ben's career.
Yeah.
And
I think that's why those two had a tricky relationship for a long time.
Exactly. And I think that just tarnishes his legacy with some Steelers fans. Like that type of stuff doesn't bother me because any competitor is never going to want to see the incumbent come in and find success.
Absolutely.
Like, and if you are a real competitor and you say that you immediately want to see the next guy come in and find success, like hats off to you, but that's just not the way that I am when it comes to competition. Like nobody wants to just see the next guy come in and kick the shit out of it. So
absolutely.
I think that puts him back a little bit, but the guy won 4 Super Bowls, man. You can't take it from him. He won 4 Super Bowls for this franchise. He deserves all the respect that he's ever going to get. Another one of those guys that I feel like if I'd lived through the 70s, I would talk so much shit about how good Terry Bradshaw was.
Absolutely. I would have been unbearable to everybody talking about Terry. And look, as great of a quarterback he was, obviously, Terry Bradshaw just holds a special place in my heart of my football fandom because waking up as a kid every Sunday in the fall and turning on Fox NFL Sunday and seeing that goofy bastard talk for an hour and do the halftime, the post-game stuff with JB and then Menifee for the last almost 20 years with Howie and Michael Strahan and Jimmy Johnson. Like, he is such an integral part of my football fandom. I will have an immense love for Terry Bradshaw forever. More so, obviously, for what he's done off the field because I wasn't alive to watch him play. But yeah, he will always have my love, my admiration, my respect. Terry Bradshaw, my quarterback after you took 7. So Bradshaw in the 7th round.
In the 8th round, this is a guy that had a shorter stint with the Steelers. Still a Hall of Famer.
Cedric Wilson going earlier than I thought.
Yeah, way earlier. It's Kevin Green. It's Kevin Green.
Oh, it's a great shout.
An insanely good pass rusher.
Insanely
good linebacker. Younger Steelers fans might not appreciate that pick. And again, he was only with Pittsburgh for a few years, but they were very influential.
He still waved the towel at his Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremony.
Exactly. Because that's another one of those guys that knows what football means to this city. You can look all around the NFL. Not all 32 franchises are equal. I mean, you can say that they are, they're not. And so I honestly would put Pittsburgh Steelers football in like the top 3 of the entire history of the league. And that could be a very Yins or biased thing.
In no particular order, it's Steelers, Packers, Cowboys. Just because of the history and whatnot.
Agreed. That's what it is. And then the Patriots would shoot 4 just given, they have 6 Super Bowls and they've done it so recently. But no, I agree with that. And I think Kevin Green understood that and he was a fan favorite. I mean, the guy was a blast. So it would be really hard given the whole body of work, to not have Kevin Green on my list.
I think that's a fantastic shout, and I love the fact that you did it. So that's a great pick in the 8th round. So I've gone offense with my last 3 picks after going defense with my first 4. So I'm trying to figure out what direction I want to go here. Because there is a position I'm considering, and there's a Hall of Famer at said position that I could go with. But at the same time, there's a guy who was better in his prime that I kind of want to go with. So I'm going to take Le'Veon Bell.
Over Franco.
Yes.
I as soon as you said there was a guy who was a Hall of Famer, I knew you were going Le'Veon. I knew it.
And again, maybe I wasn't alive in the 70s to see, just how truly good Franco was. So maybe I'm underrating him to an extent. However, just being the fact that I watched Le'Veon Bell his entire career, and watching all those prime years with Pittsburgh, in terms of the combination of patience He invented the term patience, by the way, when it comes to running backs, because nobody ran like Le'Veon Bell until he did it, where he would get the ball, wait a second and a half for a block to set up, and then punch a gap that wasn't there when the play started. So he kind of invented this new style of running over the last 10 years. And in terms of his production as a pass catching back, we didn't see a lot of that or see it be valued nearly to what it is now until Le'Veon Bell did it. So in a lot of ways, I think Le'Veon Bell's a pioneer and doesn't get the credit he deserves in that light. So with all of that combined into what he was at the very peak of his powers, I think he's the most talented running back in the history of the franchise. So I will take Le'Veon Bell in the 8th round.
When it comes to the ability to catch the football out of the back, I mean, some people forget this, and this is a league where it's easy to forget things if it's happened, even a few years ago. There's somebody else, the new hot commodity that you pay attention to. But Le'Veon was he would have been a top 2 wide receiver on 28 other football teams. Like, he was so good at catching and running the routes, and you knew he was going to get 5 to 7 catches a game. Ben was going to find him, dump it off to him. And when we had Le'Veon on the Steel Here podcast a couple of weeks ago, he had said, he's like, I don't think Ben got enough respect for, he'd be in the huddle. He's like, Le'Veon, this is going to come to you, and so the play would be whatever it was going to be, but Ben was going to backyard some bullshit around, then he was going to dump it off to Le'Veon, who was nearly impossible to take down in space. So
that's another thing too. He's so elusive.
Insanely elusive. Insane. He wasn't just patient and could find the hole. He knew how to make you miss whenever, he got there. I don't know if you ever seen the clip when we were playing the Jags in that playoff game. I want to say it was Calais Campbell was the edge for the Jaguars, and Le'Veon, dekes outside and dead legs him, and Calais was mic'd up, and he's like, holy shit. He's like, he just embarrassed me out here. He was that good. You're talking about a guy who could be a great wide receiver as well as a great running back. It's just insanely unfortunate. Again, that's my what if era. Just insanely unfortunate the way that it unfolded, because I agree with you in terms of talent. I believe he was probably the most talented running back. It's just, for me, longevity and body of work. That's why I would go with Bus.
When it comes to, you say the what if era, when it comes to teams, not just the Steelers, but overall in the history of football, that everybody kind of thinks they should have won at least one ring. The two that come to mind are those late 90s Vikings and those mid 2010 Steelers, because they were both just so loaded with talent. And for one reason or the other, it just never fully clicked. So I agree. Very big era of just, it was so close. But regardless, we move on to the 9th round.
This is an incredible pick that I'm getting in the 9th round here. I mean, this is Lynn Swann. I mean, Lynn Swann is a special wide receiver. You pair Lynn Swann's finesse with Hines Ward's tenacity, that's an insanely great set of wide receivers for Ben to flick the ball to. So Lynn Swann, I'm thrilled to get Lynn Swann at 9 here.
Don't tell George Atkinson that. He'll go off on a rant of sorts. Every one of those NFL Network shows where you give him a chance to talk about Lynn Swann, it's like, Lynn Swann, soft. I'm like, all right, George.
Overrated. And it's
overrated,
just
soft.
No, man. Look, the catch he made in that Super Bowl against the Cowboys, where he goes up, tips it to himself. The cornerbacks are both falling to the ground. He's bobbling the ball, still makes the catch. I mean, and those are the biggest moments. When you can do it on the biggest stage, in the biggest moments, and you can still put it together like that, it's really hard for me to not think that you're one of the best football players in history whenever you can do it in the biggest moment. You know what I mean? Now, a lot of guys can do it week 2. It's an irrelevant game. You do it when it counts the most. To me, that's extra points. So Lynn Swann, that's a great pick at 9.
For ninth round value, that is very good. All right. I'm going to take another one of my favorites from my youth. And that will be one James Harrison in the 9th round. So I've got Joe Green and James Harrison coming off the edge, and I'm very happy about that.
Cannot hate that at all.
That James Harrison is obviously the poster child for ex-player gets fined for hit to head. He was the guy who originated it. I don't know if he was on Ben's podcast not long ago, during the season, and he was talking about that. It was just hilarious watching him just reminisce about all the money that Roger Goodell took from him. So, but in terms of just ferociousness and talent, that year that he won Defensive Player of the Year, he had 7 forced fumbles. Obviously, the long touchdown against Arizona in the Super Bowl, but they absolutely do not win that without James Harrison. And the run of dominance that he had, multiple Pro Bowls, multiple All Pros. I don't. Do you think James Harrison gets in the Hall of Fame?
I think eventually he will. Yeah. I
think so too.
For a 5-year run, you can talk that's another guy that was just on another level. For a 5-year run, he was on another level where he just physically could not be stopped. And that also, I think that the 2008 Steelers defense is one of the greatest defenses in the history of football.
I think bare minimum, it's the top 3 defense of all time.
I agree. And when with Troy obviously being, probably the best player on that defense, but James Harrison was right there at his throat also. Like those two guys could have been defensive, NFL MVPs, interchangeably. So I do believe at some point he deserves to get into the Hall. Obviously a lot of people didn't love the way he played because it was a little bit, I'm not going to call it dirty, but some of the old heads look down on. Yes. Right. I believe he deserves to be in there.
I do too. I remember so vividly. It's one of those things that's engraved in my head. That hit on Mohamed Massaquoi against the Browns.
Yeah. Knocked him out cold. Crumpled his legs.
Yes. Now, obviously, Mohamed Massaquoi was okay, which is, why I can say it was so fucking awesome at the time, wasn't it? Just, by the way, wearing those throwbacks, the yellow helmet throwbacks, those don't get talked about enough. Those fucking ruled.
And I think a lot of people shit on those helmets. They're like, oh, that's just not the Steelers. I'm like, God, I wish they would bring those back just one time. I loved those lids, man. They
can use multiple helmets now. Bring back the yellow helmet and like the brownish jerseys. I fucking loved those.
Same, man. A lot of people hated on them. I loved them. I agree. With my last pick, I could go a series of Hall of Famers here. I mean, I could go a series of Hall of Famers here, but I'm going to go with somebody that I need on my team. Somebody that I genuinely believe gets into the Hall of Fame first ballot. TJ Watt. I think TJ Watt is going to be a Hall of Famer. I think what TJ Watt can do is still very special. He gets shit on. He does not get the respect that he deserves, which I think is just crazy. But if I can have Jack Ham and TJ Watt and Kevin Green, on my defense rushing the passer, that's, I mean, what's the name of the game in today's NFL? You better rush the passer. You better be able to put the passer on his ass. And I've got 3 of the best to ever do it. So it's hard to be upset about that.
I totally respect and love the fact that you took TJ there because you could have gone a few different routes there. The fact that I remember when he came out, and there were so many people saying, all right, he's going to be a high pick in large part because of his name value. He's a Watt. The last name's definitely going to carry him there, but we'll see with the production. And first game as a pro, by the way, gets a pick against
Picks
Cleveland.
It off in Cleveland. I was at the game. It was special. Drops into coverage, long, big arm, throws it up there. It was a very, very great day for me.
And he hasn't, that was kind of his, you drafted me, you're going to get somebody who's generational. Obviously, Steelers fans, I think that the one thing we do hold our breath on with TJ is, all right, can we get a full season out of him, which is something that's been hard to do. And again, you can't, it's not his fault. It's just shit happens. But God damn it, when you look at the record with him and without him since they've drafted him, it speaks for itself.
It's insane. And I think the one thing I'll say about TJ Watt, that he should be the sole single season all-time sack leader. He should be in sole possession of it.
I will never fucking get over the fact that was it Tyler Huntley? Was it Tyler? Yep. I'm gonna find Tyler Huntley.
Yep.
I don't know how they.
He was dropping back. That was not a run. He was dropping back to pass, and he fumbled the fucking football. During the snap. So you can't tell me that should have been a tackle for a loss and not a sack. Not. It's completely bullshit. He should be one full complete sack ahead of Michael Strahan on the all-time sacks list. And
he did it in 14 fucking games. Kevin Adams.
Exactly. And so that's why, come on, man. And I tweeted something today that they're putting Myles Garrett ahead of him.
I'm glad you said this because I was about to get to it.
It's disrespectful. Head-to-head, statistically, TJ Watt shits on Myles Garrett.
Absolutely.
It is not close. It's not close. He shits on him. And the fact that every year we hear these same talking heads come back to the well of, well, Myles Garrett gets more pressures. Bro, I don't give a fuck about pressures. What's the job? Is it to pressure the quarterback or is it to sack the quarterback? Finish the play.
And I'm not going to say that pressures mean nothing, but at the same time, like everybody's argument has been, well, who does Myles Garrett have opposite of him? Who the fuck is TJ Watt had opposite of him?
Right.
Like everyone says Bud Dupree. Look what Bud Dupree, like I love Bud Dupree. Look what he's been since he left Pittsburgh.
Right.
Alex Highsmith. Okay. Alex Highsmith got the vast majority of those 11 sacks with TJ Watt in the lineup because he was eating a lot of the attention.
Exactly.
I'm so sick and tired of every goddamn year. It's the same bullshit where, oh man, I think Myles Garrett might be better. And every year it's shown on the field that that's just unequivocally incorrect.
I agree. That's a hot button for me. And people respond, they're like, "Oh, who cares? It's just PFF and blah blah blah."
I mean, care.
I do care because it's like you fuckers forget how good he was. Like he was hurt last year, and he was still that first game against the Bengals. He was unstoppable.
Everywhere.
Unstoppable. Those interceptions against
weird pick that game. Like it was just thrown and he just a football.
He did it that game against Burrow, and then he did it when he came back. It was like week 11 maybe in Pittsburgh. Another interception at the line of scrimmage, and Burrow's just walking off the field like, what do you want me to fucking do? Like there's nothing I can do with this guy. He's just unbelievable. And so
I think he had one similar to that 2020 week one against the Giants as well, against Daniel Jones, where it was one of those at the line of scrimmage. He just tips it and comes up with it. He might be the best in the league, and those run in the family, those genes apparently of tipping the ball and finding at the line of scrimmage, because he might be the best in the league at just finding balls when they're first in the air.
It's awareness. That to me, like that's a football thing. You know, some people are just better all around athletes. I think TJ Watt is an exceptional pass rusher, but I just think he's a very great athlete, you know, and his awareness in those moments. He's never head down rushing, doesn't know that the ball's coming to his side. You very rarely ever see him rush the passer and the passer gets outside of him, or it's a draw and it gets beyond him. He's a great run stuffer. You know, it's just the TJ Watt is an elite football player. He will be a Hall of Famer. I'm confident in saying that. So I could have taken bona fide Hall of Famers there. I think TJ Watt gets in regardless.
He very likely could get to 100 career sacks in the next 2 years, and he's still got a very long career ahead of him.
He could do it this year. He could do it this year. He needs 21 and a half sacks.
24 and a half sacks. Fuck it. Let's run it up.
Right. He could get there this year, baby.
And how old is he? He was a rookie in what, 2017?
28. He's 28.
Oh, he's got plenty of time.
Oh, yeah. That's what I'm saying. He's still got 4 really good years ahead of him. So, like, come on, man. Show some respect.
Absolutely. I love the selection of TJ Watt. I'm kind of pissed off I didn't do it. My final pick. Okay. I think it kind of has to be an offensive guy just to kind of give me an even playing field here, because I've got 5 defense, 4 offense. But at the same time, I don't have an offensive lineman yet. And I feel like they do kind of deserve love.
There's two elite ones.
There's 2 that are sticking out to me too, and I'm trying to decide which one I want. All right. I will go with an offensive lineman, and it will be Alan Faneca.
He was like, I've written him down the last 3 picks, and then I'm like, no, I'm gonna go Kevin Green. No, I'm gonna go Lynn Swann. Then I went TJ, but he was my next pick. Was Alan.
You look at the era, obviously with Jerome and the things that he accomplished there, but then after that, briefly with Willie, and right before Faneca went to the Jets, like that 10-year span filled with 1,000-yard rushers. Well, look who was the main proprietor of that, whether it was on the left side or whether he was pulling to the right. The longest run in Super Bowl history, Willie Parker, Faneca is pulling from the left side to the right and creating this hole that you could drive a truck through.
Crumpled the man, and all Willie Parker sees is 20 yards of nobody.
Absolutely.
Alan Faneca was an elite guard in the NFL.
Absolutely.
Elite. First ballot Hall of Famer. And that was the Steelers, honestly, though. were smart in letting him go to the Jets because his career kind of tailed off, directly. He got paid, we won that Super Bowl. He goes to the Jets, he gets paid, but we got the most out of him for his career. Just as a very, very good guard, and he was nasty. I don't know if you've seen him recently. See how much weight he lost?
Dude,
Another one of
he
those guys that's
great.
thin as hell.
Yes.
Right. It's crazy.
He looked great at his Hall of Fame speech, and it's always cool to see these guys like immediately slim down after retiring. But yeah, like you said, throughout those, especially those 2 Super Bowls where it was, I mean, for 05, it was just a carousel of backs because Deuce and Jerome both spent time on the shelf. Willie Parker, that was kind of his coming out year where he was the big proprietor of the offense. Ferron Haynes was back there for a little bit. Occasionally Dan Kreider would get a ball or two. Like they had a rotating carousel of running backs, and all of them performed really well. And a lot of that, not to take away from their talent, but you need the guys up front to help you get there. He was one of the best to do it.
That's how you win. You win in the trenches. Circles back. We opened up with guys in the trenches. We closed with guys in the trenches because no ball. Got a no ball. You win in the trenches, baby.
Absolutely. So before we wrap this up, I mean, I do want to talk about guys we might not have drafted, but maybe just our personal favorites that, are honorable mentions, because I did see a tweet the other day from a Steelers page that I really appreciated. And it was talking about, players that might not have been like, kind of the unsung heroes. And the picture that they used was of James Ferrier. And I love the fact that he got a shout.
Agreed. Lawrence Timmons, I would put high on that list. I think Lawrence Timmons was, influential in some of those, in that 2008 Super Bowl for sure. 2010, he was definitely finding himself. Lamar Woodley was also a monster on the outside opposite James Harrison. For 4 years, Lamar Woodley was also damn near unstoppable.
Very good.
Yes. And so I would put a couple of those guys out there. Favorite types of football players, Minka is high on my list. Minka is very high on my list. He's just a smart football player. He's an insanely skilled football player. Minka would be, I think, the way the trajectory he's on, he's another guy that could go to the Hall, if he continues to perform at this level. Those are guys that can take over games. Like take over a game. The Steelers got week 1 last year against the Bengals.
Go watch week 1 last year against the Bengals.
Exactly. You look at Mink week 1. He willed them. He blocks the extra point. Like he willed them to end up winning that game. So I'm honestly, it circles me back to like right now, this is going to be a great season. Like my hopes are very high for 2023 because of the guys that we've discussed. Cam is still playing at a high level. TJ's going to be healthy and hungry. You think these guys don't see the shit that people say about them? You think they don't hear that? Like, and those are the types of guys that's motivating to them. We have an upgraded middle linebacker room. Minka is going to continue to be elite this year. Highsmith is going to look to get paid. We actually have elite edge rushers outside of the starting 2 now. You're hopefully Herbig ends up turning it on as an edge rusher, but you have Golden coming over from the Cards. I think
potentially a former number 2 overall selection from Washington joining the fray as well.
Oh God, man! Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Here's the only thing with that, and Mike Nicastro pointed it out, is that if they do trade for Chase Young, that does kind of put the writing on the wall for Alex Highsmith.
Highsmith is done if that's the case. Like no doubt about it. You're not paying 3 of them. You're not spending, especially when for the amount that TJ gets paid. You're just never gonna have that much. It's crazy.
Shout out to Derek for watching. Appreciate you, buddy. He does great content for Sports Illustrated for the Steelers. So shout out Derek.
I love D. I've followed Derek for many years now. When it comes to people that break down film, Derek is high on my
fantastic.
list. Yeah, he's very high on my list. I respect what he does.
Absolutely. There are some players that in the history of the team that might not have been great, but I still loved. And I'm sure you have those too. I said one of them earlier, Dree Archer. For some reason, I fucking loved Dree Archer. And there is one Dree Archer play that I will remember till the day I fucking die. It was
probably the only one. It's probably the only play he had.
Here's the thing, it was a play he didn't make. So it's not exactly weird. They were playing San Diego at the time on Monday night. And he lines up, Ben's in the shotgun. He lines up next to Ben. Ben throws it to him in the flat, and he drops it. and they cut to Ben. He's like clapping. He's like, "Come on, Dree!" And that's all I remember from that play. And that is my only Dree Archer memory. But I thought he was going to be such a fun weapon because he ran like a 3.240 or whatever the fuck it was, and he was great, fast, very fast. And that's all he had to his game.
Damn shame he couldn't get it to go. And I think the Steelers have steered away from taking guys, that might be gimmicky since then, but
we'll see with Calvin Austin.
And so that's what I was going to say. People, I don't want to 100% say Calvin Austin is similar to Dree Archer because I think Calvin Austin has quite a dynamic toolbox of things that he can do.
Sauce Gardner said that he's the toughest guy that he covered in college.
And that says a lot, does it not? Like, so if you're talking about a guy who you now know as a top 3 cornerback in the NFL, saying that about a man who we basically redshirted his rookie season, I'm excited to see what Calvin Austin can do this season for sure.
I am too. Other players. Now, I didn't draft this guy, but he is legitimately one of my favorite Steelers of all time, Mike Wallace. I love Mike Wallace so much.
Yeah, Mike the Kid. I loved Mike Wallace too. He was just the burner, man. And that we haven't had a guy like Mike Wallace since Mike Wallace left. Somebody you knew,
Absolutely.
Ben could drop back there and sling it 60 fucking yards downfield, and this guy was gonna
Martavis was almost that. Martavis was almost that.
And that's another guy. Marty B would be a guy. You talk about your favorite players that we didn't draft. Martavis would be high on my list.
Really?
Another one of those what ifs. Like that's the what if era for me. That is another one of the what if eras for me because
if he was a rookie 5 years later, he's killing the league right now.
Unbelievable that it's the weed, man. It's the and now look at it. It's they don't care about weed. They didn't care about weed back then. You had to do something stupid to get busted for weed, and that's what Le'Veon said on the show. He's like, "Look, man, we knew all season they weren't testing you unless you were already in the system." Like so, lots of guys smoke. So it's just a damn shame that a career like his got cut short because he was a freak. Martavis Bryant was an absolute freak, man. He had speed.
That one play against Arizona where Landry Jones is in at quarterback is easily my favorite Marty B play of all time.
And he does it to Tyrann Mathieu. People forget that. He did it to Tyrann Mathieu. So, like, don't ever sell that guy's talent short. It was a short run in Pittsburgh, but special talent. How about the touchdown he has against the Bengals in the playoffs?
Yeah, catching it with his fucking kneecap.
Front flip, catches it behind his ass, brings it around. I was there that day too. That's the day they took a run at Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. Who are some of your maybe players that you have like a soft spot for? Maybe weren't great. Like it might be Dree Archer or Dree Archer-esque. Do you have any of those?
Chris Fumatu Ma'afala.
Shout out Fu, man. Oh, I hadn't started watching football yet. The playoff game that he scores the touchdown against Cleveland, I have just turned like 5. So it was the season prior to me like starting to watch. But I've since gone back and watched that game in its entirety. I want a Chris Fumatu Ma'afala jersey more than anything.
Special game. Like to me, that's that's the one game I'll always think of.
Yeah.
I think he was so much fun. Just a bad boy, a type of guy who knew that his position was expendable. He wasn't going to be the elitist running back in football, but when he got the ball, he was going to give it 1,000%. And that game you're talking about, Steelers come from behind, big come from behind win against the Browns. That's the birth of Renegade. Renegade was played for the Renegade was played for the first time. Yep, in that Cleveland Browns game, they played it for the first time, like in the third quarter, because the Steelers were down like almost, I want to say 3 scores or 18 points or something crazy.
It was something crazy.
And so they play Renegade, hypes up the crowd. We intercept the ball in the next player. It was a fumble recovery, something. We had a turnover. And then we did it. They played it again another time in that game. And then from there, Renegade stuck. So, yeah, that's Renegade comes from that Fuamatu game. Another guy would be Isaac Redman. I liked the way Isaac Redman played football.
I forgot about Big Red.
He the way he played.
And the game where Ben breaks his nose, and it's the same game where Troy comes off the edge and karate chops Flacco's arm. After they recover that fumble, Redmond's the one who kind of gets that dump off and breaks a tackle and scores.
From Ben at like the 10 or 11 yard line. Yep. It was a little broken play across the middle there. He catches it, swings it back in. Yeah, Isaac Redmond, again, short run. One of those guys, a special place in my heart. Love that guy. Good things to say about him.
There's a few guys that I was convinced were going to be like when Eli Rogers had first joined the team. He had a touchdown catch against Washington week 1, 2016 on Monday Night Football, and it was off like a weird deflection thing, but he still had a touchdown. I was like, this Eli Rogers guy could be, he doesn't have a B in his name, but we need to start talking about him as somebody who's going to be a special part of this team. And he gets hurt and whatnot, and a lot of things go wrong. But I was a big Eli Rogers guy.
He came up with some big catches too. That's another one of those guys that short run, but in clutch moments, Ben looked for him. I mean, he had some big catches in a comeback. I want to say 2016 maybe against the Bengals. We were getting fucking beat up. This was a holiday. This might have been Christmas or something. I remember it pretty clearly. We had a terrible first half, clawed our way back into the game. He catches the touchdown at the end of the game that gives us the lead. But a really good-handed wide receiver. It just goes to show that guys like that we gloss over. Because we've had so many other elite players, at the same position. But Eli Rogers was good. He could play.
Absolutely. And there, we talked about our draft already, but there's plenty of guys who I would have loved to have taken if the draft. I would have taken Greg Lloyd, the thickest face mask in the history of football, Greg Lloyd.
And Bill Cowher, for me, Greg Lloyd will always be. So I was really young. I was probably 6. The Steelers played the Buffalo Bills in the divisional round of the playoffs the year they went to the Super Bowl 96. And my dad had taken me. It was my first Steelers game. Mm-hmm. And Greg Lloyd, my dad, he's like, let's wait after the game. This is where the players come out, et cetera. And I'm cold. It was so cold this day, man. And as a 6-year-old, I mean, I'm fucking cold.
Right.
So I'm waiting out there. We waited for a while till the players come out and, all of that stuff. And he comes out and he came over and my dad's like, can you get us an autograph, Greg? And he took the time to sign autographs for probably like 40 people that had waited in the cold. This was like hours after the game had ended. So for me, it's little stuff like that I'll always remember and appreciate. Yes, Greg Lloyd would be another one of those guys that I think highly of.
Levon Kirkland was another one that I almost took just because I don't know what. I do know why I have a special place for Levon Kirkland because I didn't really watch much of him like in real time. I've gone back and watched a lot of games that he was obviously a part of, but NFL Game Day 2000, the first football game I ever had, and he was on the Steelers roster, and he's the guy I always used on defense was Levon Kirkland. And so it's a weird connection, but Levon Kirkland will always be a big one for me.
He was a bad boy too. I mean, and that's a big
He was massive and playing like, a coverage linebacker a lot. He was a big boy.
That's a big man. Ike Taylor. Ike Taylor would be another guy that I just think doesn't get a ton of respect. Given he had stone hands. He did have a pick in the Super Bowl. Can't take that from him. He
sure did. Actually, when I interviewed him the first time I had him on my show, I asked him if he sends Matt Hasselbeck a Christmas card every year or not, and he appreciated that question. So I see one of the coolest dudes I've ever had, coolest Steelers I've ever talked to, one of the coolest dudes in general to have on. I love Ike.
Incredible. I got to meet him for the first time like a month and a half ago out in Jersey. I was with Jarrett for an autograph signing and such, and he was there, and very, very humble. Talked for like half an hour, just as if. We were one of the guys. Like, great guy. He was a really, really good cornerback. Really good corner. If he had better hands, I think he would be a lot higher on people's lists of like Steelers great cornerbacks. He just had stone hands.
So the first game that I watched was Ben's first start against the Browns. So it would have been like week 5 of 2004. And the guy who took the kickoffs, Ricardo Coakley. I was a big Ricardo Coakley kid for a while.
Yeah. I'll tell you, a guy I had a love-hate relationship with was Antoine Blake.
Dude, I actually just tweeted about Antoine Blake not that long ago because we were talking about guys with really good aesthetics. He looked swaggy as shit on the field. He had the yellow arm sleeve, one of my favorite helmets of all time because it's like that running back robot type thing. It's a clean look. He would make he had a really good interception against Tennessee once, I do recall that, but he would also get burnt.
He would get smoked. He would get this is why it was a love-hate relationship because he could pick six it. I remember you had hinted at it earlier, that Chargers game where Mike Vick has the deep touchdown to Marcus Wheaton. In that game, Antoine Blake had a pick. He could catch the ball. It was just he would get. It was either a great game or a dog shit game. There was very little in between for Antoine Blake, but I lived on the highs, so Antoine Blake was a guy that I fucked with.
Absolutely, buddy. We could do this all night if we really wanted to, but I'll let you go on the Antoine Blake high note. Appreciate you doing this with me. This is a lot of fun. What do you have coming with Jersey, Jerry, on the Steel Here podcast?
So we are. There are some things that I would.
If you can't tell me,
I can't really talk about it yet, but there are some
Okay.
very exciting things that are coming up here. Next month, we have the Cam Hayward Celebrity Softball game out in Washington. So something else that I do, the Terrible Tailgate. I'll be hosting the Terrible Tailgate there. Jarrett will be in town. He's playing in the game. So we're going to do some interviews with some guys there at camp. We have, some interviews lined up as far as that's concerned. There's a chance there is a pretty high profile player that will be coming on the Still Here podcast, either weekly, bi-weekly, or something like that during the season. So it will be special.
Do you know what days you're going to be at camp?
Yeah, so Jerry and I are going out the week of Friday Night Lights. We'll be out there that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And so we have some stuff lined up for those days. Friday Night Lights, we went last year and we had like 4 interviews lined up, and then it got rained out. Like it poured rain the entire day, so we didn't get to do it. But this year, hopefully, God willing, the weather is a little bit better. So that's also a fun week. At Friday Night Lights, I don't know if you've
Friday
been there.
Night Lights is one of the coolest things that any team does at camp. So it's a very, very cool thing.
Yeah.
Now, so I hope to see you there and chop it up with you in person. I think that would be very fun. Again, I appreciate the hell out of you doing this. This is a lot of fun. In terms of what people can expect from me, watch the tape on Kenny Pickett. So, by the way, that'll be coming out this week. People seem to like that a lot. Go watch the last ones on Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence, which is available on this channel. Stuff from USA Today. Go read that. Send me presents, all that fun stuff. Kevin, buddy, this is a lot of fun. And like I said, at camp, I hope to see you there, and we'll keep chopping it up in the future, buddy. All right.
It's been a blast. I appreciate you having me, Jarrett. I had a good time. We'll do it again sometime. We'll do some other things. Talk about sandwiches, Pittsburgh staples, stuff like that. But no, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, buddy. Thank you to everybody for watching Black and Gold Thursdays.